and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 493, and today's date is October 15th, 2014, and the title of this episode is U.S. Chemical Weapons Mysteriously Appear in Iraq. We are going to get right into the economic collapse news, and we see today the stock market was really plunging downward. It was hit hard, moved down very quickly, and it looks like the high-frequency plunge protection team pushed it back up as best they possibly can. But in the last 3 weeks, the market has gone down 900 or so plus points, and we can see that the real economic indicators around the country are now starting to shine through all this manipulated data, and we're starting to see, like Greece, their returns in the market completely took a nosedive. Greece's main stock index closed about 6.3% lower, having traded down as much as 9.8% lower early in the day, following a 5.7% loss on Tuesday. That brings the index to its worst level in 14 months. And we have to remember, Greece still has this huge amount of debt. Cyprus has a huge amount of debt. France, Portugal, Italy, they have very high unemployment. Youth unemployment is skyrocketing, and this is spreading all throughout Europe. But here in the United States, what are we seeing? Well, we have the illusionary, manipulated numbers that the government wants us to believe. They used to have the stock market where all eyes were on that because it continually went up, but we're seeing it starting to come down a little bit. Doesn't mean that they're going to try to push it back up, which they most likely will try to do. And it seems like the Empire Fed manufacturing has plunged now from 5-year highs to 6-month lows in 1 month. Empire Fed manufacturing missed expectations by the most since June 2010 as new orders collapse. Now, in the retail market, we have to understand they include auto sales, they include fuel and gas and oil in retail sales. Now, when retail sales are doing well, they always mention, yes, retails are doing well, but they don't say, oh, the prices of gas has gone up or things like that. When retail sales are doing bad, they always say, well, the gas prices have come down, and this is why retail is doing much, much worse than it normally would be doing. But when we look through all of that and the propaganda that the corporate media and the federal government is putting out there, we see, well, that's not really true. September retail sales were arguably the worst of the year. U.S. consumer loaded up on debt in the spring and summer. The payback hangover has finally hit with the payment due in the mail, resulting in a collapse in revolving credit as reported previously and as the September retail sales just confirmed. Headline retail sales minus 0.3%, missing expectations of 0.1% decline and down from the 0.6% in August. And that's a positive 0.6 in August. Retail sales ex autos minus 0.2%, missing expectations of positive 0.2% increase and down from positive 0.3%. Retail sales ex autos and gas down minus 0.1%, missing expectations of a solid 0.4% rebounded, down from 0.5%. Now, here are the biggest misses right now in the retail sector. Clothing stores drop by negative 1.2%. Sporting goods are down negative 0.1%. Furniture is down by negative 0.8%. Miscellaneous retailers down negative 0.2%. Amazon declined 1.1%. So we can see retail is really being hit hard at this time. We can see right now there are a lot of stores closing. We understand Sears, Kmart, JCPenney, Radio Shack, and many other retailers are hoping that this holiday season is going to be fantastic, and they're going to need a fantastic holiday season, or we are not going to see any of these stores any longer, and we're going to see additional stores completely going out, and we will never ever see them again. Even though they've been around for a very long time, they will not be able to sustain what they have right now throughout this holiday season because sales are going to be absolutely terrible. And we can see right now that Goldman Sachs and other financial institutions are out there, and they're already revising the GDP numbers lower. They're bringing it lower. Walmart was out there, and they just cut sales forecasts by nearly half. Walmart sees next 3 years profits growth somewhat slower. Walmart sees Fiscal year 16 sales growth down by 2 to 4%. Walmart sees next 3-year sales to grow about 2.5 to 3.5%. So we can see right now they are not looking for a very good holiday season going forward, and they're continually revising their information, and we can see the financial institutions are doing this in the same way, and they're starting to realize that, yeah, it doesn't look good. Now, in regards to real estate, what we're seeing is the interest rates have come down, and it looks like it ticked up, and mortgage applications rose a little bit. But what's very interesting about this, and we see this quite often when the interest rates come down, and if they come down quite a bit, people rush in and they apply for mortgages. Whether they go back up, people say, forget it, it's out of my league, I just can't do it right now. But the gauge of loan requests for home purchases, a leading indicator of home sales, fell by 0.7%. So again, real estate not looking good whatsoever. And as we go throughout this year, we're going to see retail continually slide. We're going to see real estate continually slide, and the stock market, again, this is completely manipulated. They're pumping in as much as they possibly can. They're using high-frequency trading, plunge protection, just to keep this market alive right now. And of course, they could use the Ebola scare to explain away why the economy is failing. Now, I did a report on this about a week ago, and we can see that right now this might be falling into that agenda of Ebola. Now again, there's many other agendas like vaccines and other things, but right now we can see that things are starting to open up, and we can see what exactly is going on here, and we're going to have to watch the situation very, very carefully. Now, China and Italy, they have signed deals worth $10 billion. Now, we understand China has made deals with Greece now. China has made deals with Italy, because what's happening is they're realizing that, listen, putting these countries further and further into debt, imposing more austerity on the people, it's not working. Unemployment's going up, youth unemployment's going up, businesses are leaving, so this is not helping the country, and all they have to show for it is more debt. So these countries are looking at China and other countries to help them out of the situation, and they're looking for real economic growth. Chinese and Italian companies signed deals worth 8 billion euros, more than $10 billion in Rome. The deals signed after Lee met his Italian counterpart, Matteo Renzi, covered investment, engineering, technology, and financial cooperation. The Chinese premier also said Beijing would like to import more Italian products. Italy faces a third consecutive year of economic contraction in 2014, and these countries are getting desperate right now. They want business to come in, they want their exports, they want something to happen instead of just being piled on with more and more debt, and this is why they're looking towards the BRIC nations at this time. Now, Russia is out there, and they are planning a giant state oil services company. Putin has approved the creation of a state-owned oil exploration drilling corporation that will replace Western oil service companies forced to reduce operations in Russia by sanctions over Ukraine. So this is going to remove all the U.S. companies from Russia. They will do it without them. A national oil service company uniting all necessary drilling and servicing expertise is crucial to ensure Russia can keep its hydrocarbon output stable in the long term. And again, Russia, China, the other BRIC nations, they are moving away from the Western Central Bank countries because they realize the dollar is dying. They need to be independent. They need to look inward and create their own operating systems, create their own payment system, their own SWIFT system, trade in their own currencies, and we can see they are definitely doing this, and they're moving forward. Now, the biz is out there, and they are giving a huge warning right now of a violent reversal of global markets. Investors take zero rates for granted and unwisely believe that the central banks will protect them, says the capital markets chief of the Bank of International Settlements. The global financial markets are dangerously stretched and may unwind with shock force as liquidity dries up. The Business Market Committee said investors have become far too complacent, wrongly believing that central banks can protect them, many staking bets that are bound to blow up as the first sign of stress. The Biz warned earlier this summer that the world economy is in many respects more vulnerable to a financial crisis than it was in 2007. And we see this because back in 2007, 2008, many of the people lost their life savings, lost their pensions, lost their homes. They didn't keep the same job, lost their credit, and today they are worse off right now compared to 2007, 2008. So when this hits, it's going to hit very, very hard. And we see the debt ratios are now far higher, and emerging markets have also been drawn into the fire over the last 5 years. The world as a whole has never been more leveraged. Debt ratios in the developed economies have risen by 20 percentage points to 275% of GDP since the Lehman Brothers crash. So we're not seeing good times ahead of us. We're seeing something huge headed towards us. And we can see already with the stock market very volatile in the last 3 weeks. It is going way up, coming way down, and we can see that it looks like people are getting a little bit nervous. They're looking at what's going on in the real world. They're seeing that these job numbers are completely fake. They see retail sales are not where they're supposed to be. They see real estate starting to plummet, and when they look around, they're saying, I see food going up. I see meat, alcohol, fresh food, all increasing in price. So I do see inflation. Of course, all the other products where they can control it a lot better, we don't see it, but we can see definitely that food is moving up, and they're getting very nervous. They don't see the profits of all these companies, and they're starting to say, maybe we should start selling and get out of the market before the whole thing comes tumbling down. Now, as we know, Obama is pretty much keeping the borders open. He wants the illegals to come in. We realize what the agenda is. He wants the illegals to come in. He moves them around the country to 23 different states. He gives them working papers, and he puts them on Obamacare to boost his numbers. Then he subsidizes them. And then, of course, these children are not really children. They're teenagers, young adults who could fight in the armed forces. They can also be put on the student loan cycle here, where it will boost those numbers. And we can see this is all part of the agenda, and this is why they want the illegals to continually come in. But what's very interesting is that nearly 900,000 illegal aliens who have received a final order or removal are still in the United States, and about 167,000 of them are convicted criminals who were released by ICE and are currently at large. So we can see right now that none of these illegals are pretty much going to their to the courts. They're not showing up. They're not abiding by the law because they want to stay in this country. So they're hiding. They're moving to different areas. And again, the Obama administration really wants to keep them in this country because it makes all of his programs look really good. The main corporations want these illegals in here because it's cheap labor. And again, if you really look at it, the people do not want the illegals in here. And this is why Obama is waiting for after the elections to sign the executive order, because he realizes if he signs it before, the people are going to look at this and say, no, 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 we do not want this. And he knows it's not them. He knows it's not the people that want this, it's the actual corporations that want the illegals here. Now, it looks like Obama has sentenced whistleblowers to 10 times the jail time of all prior U.S. presidents combined. When it comes to prosecuting whistleblowers, the Obama administration holds the record with 8, which is more than double the 3 who were prosecuted by previous presidents. According to the American Civil Liberties Union, due to press freedom concerns, sentencing in media leak cases has historically been relatively light, with only 24 months of jail time for the 3 whistleblowers prosecuted from 1973 to 2005. However, the ACLU noted that Obama has secured 526 months of prison time for national security leakers, with the majority given to Chelsea Manning, who was sentenced to 35 years. Now, I wanted to go through the Ebola timeline so we can all have a picture of what has happened from the beginning. Now, if we go back to December of 2013. This is December 28, 2013. A 2-year-old child identified only as Emily dies of an unidentified hemorrhagic fever in Guinea, followed by his mother, sister, and grandmother. Mourners at the grandmother's funeral, together with healthcare workers, carried the virus to nearby villages. March 22, 2014. Guinea reports that the fever has been confirmed as Ebola and has already killed 59 people. There are already concerns that it may have spread to neighboring Sierra Leone. May 26, 2014. Ebola has reached Sierra Leone. The World Health Organization confirms this. 4 months later, an increasingly desperate government will bar people from leaving their homes for 3 days in a bid to halt the spread of the virus. July 20th, 2014, Liberian government employee Patrick Sawyer arrives in the 21 million strong city of Lagos in Nigeria and collapsing. Having flown from Liberia with a layover in Togo, he dies of Ebola 5 days later. July 27th, 2014, Liberia shuts down most of its border crossings. Dr. Sheikh Umar Khan, who played a pioneering role in Sierra Leone's response to the virus, dies 2 days after becoming infected. August 8th, 2014, the World Health Organization declares Ebola an international health emergency. 4 days later, the death toll exceeds 1,000. August 12, 2014, the World Health Organization gives its cautious blessing to use experimental drugs to treat Ebola. August 24, 2014, British volunteer nurse William Pooley is flown back to the UK for emergency treatment after contracting Ebola while helping patients in Sierra Leone. Pooley, 29, goes on to make a full recovery. August 26, 2014, the Health Ministry of the Democratic Republic of Congo informs the World Health Organization of an outbreak of Ebola, which is later confirmed to be a different strain to that affecting West Africa. August 29, 2014, Senegal becomes the 5th country to be hit by Ebola, while riots break out in neighboring Guinea over rumors that the health workers are deliberately transmitting the virus to locals. September 5th, and they're saying that because they were giving vaccinations, and when they received those vaccinations, those people received the Ebola virus. September 5th, 2014, with the pace of the epidemic accelerating, the World Health Organization figures suggest that 2,100 people have died from a total of around 4,000 who are thought to be infected. September 16th, 2014, Barack Obama announces that the U.S. will send 3,000 troops to West Africa. September 26, 2014, the World Health Organization puts the death toll at 3,091 of 6,574 suspected cases. Liberia, Guinea, Sierra Leone remain the hardest hit countries. Nigeria and Senegal are far better. September 29, 2014, Thomas Duncan, who flew from Monrovia to Dallas via Brussels and Washington, becomes the first person to be diagnosed with Ebola while on U.S. soil and dies just over a week later. 2 healthcare workers who treated Duncan go on to test positive for Ebola, with nurse Nina Pham becoming the first person to contact Ebola while within the U.S. October 7, 2014, a Spanish nurse becomes the first person to contact the virus outside West Africa. Madrid-based Teresa Romero Ramos had been treating a Spanish priest who has flown home after contracting Ebola in Sierra Leone. The diagnosis raises concern over Europe's state of readiness to deal with the virus. October 9th, the U.S. and the U.K. announced that it will introduce temperature screening for passengers arriving from these West African countries. In the U.S., New York's JFK Airport start enhanced Ebola screening on October 11th. The World Health Organization announces that the fatality rate from Ebola has reached 70%. This is on October 14th, 2014. So no longer is it 44% you'll live, 56% you'll die. It is now up to 70%, with the total number of deaths so far topping 4,447. And this is the timeline of Ebola. Now, we understand Ebola is in the United States, and it seems like at this point, the CDC is kind of not taking this very seriously in the beginning. And it reminds me of when Obama opened up the borders, advertised down in Central America, had the illegals come up and pretended that the borders weren't open. And of course, the border agents were giving instructions to pretty much move away, let the people come in, and it seems like the CDC might have the same instructions as the border agents had when the borders were open, because we see the precautions they were taking, there were none. They were letting people do whatever they wanted to do, touch wherever they wanted to touch, and there was no protocols whatsoever. And now it seems like they're stepping it up, because now there's actually 3 confirmed cases, and this one nurse came in contact with about 132 passengers. The nurse flew on a plane called Frontier Airlines, and pretty much wherever this person touched or sneezed on, these people could be infected, and now they have to take it seriously, and we can see that things are starting to really ramp up, and we're going to have to watch this very, very closely as time goes on. Now, it seems like they're trying to make an Ebola test that can diagnose if you have Ebola within 10 minutes. Researchers in the United States are trying to perfect a rapid diagnostic test that should be able to positively identify the presence of the deadly Ebola disease in patients in only 10 minutes' time. But they don't expect regulators in the United States to greenlight their new testing system until next year. But I think if things really start to ramp up and spread, they will say, okay, let's start using this test and let's see how it works in the real world. And this would be something that we definitely need. It would be a very good screening apparatus, because right now the current test is not really reliable. And again, those people who are out there should be prepared for something to go full blast into the country. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we need to be prepared, just like we're prepared for everything else. So we should have rubber gloves. We should have bleach. We should have certain supplies. And also, this is also good to have anyhow in your preps. And we need to prepare just in case that this does go out of control and they can't control it anymore. But I do have some faith, because I understand that Nigeria and Senegal, they have contained what is going on there, and I do believe they will contain what is going on here. But all they need is the scare, the fear, and they can pretty much say, this is why the economy didn't do that well this last part of the year. We were expecting it to do really, really well. We were on track for a complete recovery, but this set us back a little bit because people didn't want to go out holiday shopping, people didn't want to take planes, people didn't want to go onto buses, and we can see that things really fell apart. But I don't know how they're going to explain the online shopping. I guess they could say that they were afraid to have the delivery man deliver the package, and of course they could use this to explain away why the economy is slipping at this time, and we're seeing that we're kind of headed in that direction. Now, the U.S. is asking Spain for the usage of 2 military bases in its south as a stopover point for their 3,000-strong American soldiers coming out of West Africa. If the request is successful, the U.S. would begin utilizing its bases. The U.S. wants its aircraft, which are returning from high Ebola risk countries such as Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia, to be able to stop over. Spanish military health officials are negotiating strict protocols with the Pentagon at this time. Now, as we know, the United States central bankers are trying to pretty much change governments all around the world, because they need the puppet government in there to do their bidding, to take control of the country, and to make sure the country uses the U.S. dollar as reserve currency, and they capture all the natural resources of that country. And we can see in South Sudan, they're doing the same thing right now. U.S. is attempting to carry out a regime change in South Sudan because the South Sudanese President Salva Kiir is determined to continue supporting Chinese oil production in his country. And again, wherever China or Russia are, that's where the United States goes. The U.S. managed to get the Chinese oil fields shut down a couple of years back by promising to provide upwards of $200 million a month in aid during the dispute between Sudan and South Sudan over pipeline transit fees if the oil fields were closed. Well, guess what happened? The United States didn't deliver. They didn't send the $200 million. And basically, when they didn't receive this, guess what happened? They started pumping the oil once again. The Chinese decided, listen, we're going to give you $8 billion for your infrastructure. We're going to help you out here. And this is why we have the problem in Sudan right at this time. Now, Russia is asking Kiev to prove that the food that they're exporting to Russia is not from the EU, because what they've noticed in the regions around Ukraine in Russia that border Ukraine where they trade, most of the apples, tomatoes, cucumbers, pears, and plums do not have any type of identification marks on them, so they don't know where they're coming from. So they want Ukraine to prove that they're not getting European agricultural products, and they're not shipping it to Ukraine and then sending it over to Russia. So we have that going on right now. Now, for Ukraine to bypass the gas problem with Russia, what they're going to do is they're going to build their own pipeline right to Poland. They're going to build a 110-kilometer long gas pipeline for a yearly transit of up to about 10 billion cubic meters of gas from Poland. This project is going to cost about $245 million. Now, of course, they don't want to use this money to pay Russia. They're going to use it to build a completely separate pipeline so they don't have to deal with Russia any longer. And you can see already they were never going to pay Russia at this time. If the project is translated into practice, Ukraine will be able to get gas from Germany, and it will also be possible to transport liquefied gas from a terminal in the Polish port city. So we can see right now they're doing everything they possibly can to remove themselves from Russia. They don't want to have anything to do with Russia at this time. Poroshenko is out there, and he is saying that Ukraine needs to draft a new variant of a state program for development of armed forces and a development of weapons and military hardware. And he says he believes that the country needs a new military doctrine. We should work out changes in the military doctrine immediately. And NATO is out there, and like I said yesterday, Russia had training going on inside of Russia, and Putin said, listen, I want this peace deal to go forward, this ceasefire to go forward, so we're going to move the training exercise further back away from the border. And NATO is out there saying, well, we see a huge troop buildup, and we're not seeing you remove any of your troops. Of course, they have no proof to give whatsoever that there is a troop buildup, and this is normally what NATO does. They're just out there, flapping their lips, telling you how many troops there are. They can never give you proof, and if they do give you proof, it's those blurry black and white satellite photos, which are back from the 70s, because today's satellite photos are 3D and in color, and you can read the writing on a license plate. So I don't know why they continually give us this ridiculous 1970s black and white. Well, of course, it's to fool everyone and convince everyone that, yeah, they're really troops there and there's really armament there and things like that. But so far, every time they've tried this, it has always turned out to be false. But of course, they're out there and they're using this propaganda as they've done in the past. Now, it looks like Putin and Poroshenko are heading to Italy, and it seems like two things are happening now in Ukraine. It looks like Poroshenko is trying to make deals with Putin, trying to iron out the ceasefire peace deal. He realizes that he cannot fight the southeastern section and Crimea, because what he sees right on his doorstep outside of his office is the soldiers, the people protesting and rioting out there saying, listen, you haven't paid us, you haven't fed us, we're going to have no gas. And he's realizing if he keeps this up, they're going to come in and do the same thing they did with Yankovic. But what's very interesting, if you notice, Poroshenko is meeting with Putin, making deals with Putin. Of course, he's playing both sides right now. But let's see what comes out of this meeting, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see even further peace with Russia. But of course, on the other side, who do we have? We have the central bankers. We have Yatsenyuk, John Kerry. We have them all out there saying, no, you must go into the southeast. You must have a war. You must kill as many people as you possibly can. It doesn't matter as long as you retake the southeastern section and Crimea. So he has both in his ear. One side he has peace, the other side he has war. Now, in Ethiopia, the U.S. Embassy in Ethiopia has warned of a possible attack by Somali militant group Al-Shabaab. And the question is, why are we seeing this? Because every time there is some type of terrorist attack, it's because the United States government, central bankers, don't like what's going on in that country. And when we really take a look, what do we see? Well, China and Ethiopia have signed more than a dozen agreements aimed at shoring up ties between the world's second largest economy and the African continent that saw their trade top $200 billion last year. In Ethiopia, Chinese firms have invested heavily in recent years, with their worth swelling to over $1 billion in 2014. Beijing is also a key partner in Ethiopia's bid to expand infrastructure such as roads, railways, and telecom services. What else do we see in Ethiopia? Well, we see GPB Global Resources, a unit of Russia's state-owned Gazprom Bank Group, may invest about $60 million searching for petroleum in northeastern Ethiopia. The company last week announced it won approval from the government for production sharing agreement that covers 7 years for exploration and 25 years of production. Ethiopia's government is seeking new sources of revenue to help offset a trade deficit from the IMF, which expects it to climb to about $8.9 billion. So they're in trouble. They're looking for countries to come in to help out because they've been put into deep debt by the IMF. And of course, now we're getting the warnings of terrorist attacks from the United States central bankers, and we can see it is the same pattern over and over and over. Now in Yemen, it seems that the southern separatists are seeking to split from Yemen's north, set an ultimatum for the government to evacuate its soldiers and civil servants by November 30th, and asked all foreign firms producing oil and gas in the region to halt exports immediately. And like I said, once these tribes take over the oil production and they try to sell this to other countries using other currency than the dollar, this is when the big problem occurs. But already we see it's starting to move in this direction. Now it looks like the United States government central bankers decided to name the Syrian campaign. It's called Inherent Resolve. And they name pretty much all their campaigns, and there's a specific reason why they do this, and we can see right now they've just named it. But it seems that the U.S. found its own chemical weapons in Iraq. The only chemical weapons U.S. forces found in Iraq between 2004 and 2011 were designed in the United States, manufactured in Europe, and according to a new report, they were found by Marines. Americans and Iraqi troops found in multiple cases were injured by aged and degraded stockpiles of chemical weapons in Iraq. However, the report said the U.S. withheld this information about the discoveries, as those weapons were manufactured in 1980 when the U.S. and its allies were actively supplying chemical agents to Saddam. So basically, they didn't have any problems supplying chemical agents to Saddam, having Saddam use it on various groups, but they do have a problem of Assad using chemical weapons or having chemical weapons. So it's kind of a double standard there. And of course, did they really find this? Were they always there? Because there are many different documents stating that there were no weapons of mass destruction found in Iraq, not even chemical weapons. And there's other documents, and I posted them on the site here. It's a PDF. You can take a look where it says no, there is absolutely no weapons of mass destruction. They couldn't find anything anywhere in the country. Now, of course, if this is a stockpile from 1980 or so, it is very fragile. You can't really touch it. A lot of these soldiers who found it became sick. It's mustard gas. And of course, they're saying the Islamic State is using this. But again, this would pretty much have a devastating effect on themselves. And it looks like this story is put into place to try to cover up how the Islamic State actually got chemical weapons and how they're using it in Syria. And it's just very interesting in how this all of a sudden just came out in the nick of time, and they just decided to reveal this. Now, the United States government is out there and they're saying, listen, It looks like Syria is good with their chemical weapons. They're saying that, you know what, the discrepancies in the chemical weapons is not that big of a deal. And of course, the reason why they're doing this at this point is because they can't go anywhere with it. Assad has no chemical weapons. They've trying so many different types of propaganda to say that he didn't reveal the chemical weapon areas, which he just did. They really didn't produce anything. They didn't have anything in there. He handed over all the chemical weapons, and they continually tried to go down this route, but it really isn't working. So it looks like now maybe they'll be going with war crimes, because they do have Caesar in Congress showing pictures from a hospital, but of course this is not proof. This is after the effects. We have no idea where all this was, where all this has occurred. And again, this is how the United States does this. They only show the pictures of what happened, but there's no evidence of where it happened or who made it happen. And again, they might be trying the war crime route because they can't get anything on the chemical weapons point of view here. Now, Iran is out there, and they have lashed out at the Western countries for supporting terrorism in the region and renewed Iran's support for a political solution in the crisis in Syria. Syria is out there, and they are saying, listen, we completely categorically reject calls for the creation of buffer zones on its territory, saying it would treat any such bid as an act of aggression. The Turkish attempts to establish a buffer zone on the Syrian soil are flagrant violation of the Charter of the UN and international law. The ministry further noted the Turkish government, since the outset of the crisis in Syria, has been systematically carrying out everything that could disrupt Syria's stability and jeopardize its sovereignty and territorial integrity. The statement also stressed that Damascus will take all necessary measures to protect its sovereignty and territorial integrity. And we can see right now, we know for a fact, the United States government, central bankers, the coalition, Turkey, they want a buffer zone, they want a no-fly zone, but it's very difficult to get at this point because the Islamic State does not have an air force. And what would be the reason to do this? So I'm sure they're ginning up something else that's going to come along where we're going to say, this is why we need the buffer zone and the no-fly zone. And we can see they're moving in that direction. We understand that troops are getting ready to be maneuvered into Iraq. And again, we're going to see things go hot right after the elections. They're really going to go full steam ahead. And this is something we really need to watch. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.